the smiler of sleep. The heat in my grandmother's house was a living thing. It was the kind of deep, wet heat that sinks into the wooden walls and floorboards, that clings to your skin like a second layer. I was born in Phnom Penh, a city of air conditioners and concrete, but my roots were here, in this small village sleeping in the shadow of the Siem Reap temples. I was an architectural surveyor, sent to map out the lesser-known, unrestored ruins that dotted the countryside like forgotten bones. It was a dream job, a connection to the past I'd only ever read about. But that was before I found the amulet. It started a week into my stay. I was working at a small, crumbling site the locals called Sleep, the Temple of the Sleeping King. It wasn't on any tourist map. Giant kapok and banyan trees had claimed it centuries ago, their roots strangling the sandstone reliefs of apsaras and devas, their faces worn smooth by 1,000 monsoons. The air there was different, still and heavy, like the inside of a sealed tomb. It was near the gnarled base of the largest banyan tree, where the earth was dark and rich with decay, that my trowel hit something hard. Not a stone. It had the dull gleam of old silver. I dug it out with my fingers. It was a small, palm-sized amulet tarnished almost black with age. The design was strange, not like the usual Buddhist or Hindu iconography. It was a face, abstract and almost featureless, except for a simple, deeply etched crescent carved where the mouth should be. A smile. The moment my skin touched the metal, a jolt, cold as a mouthful of ice, shot up my arm. It was absurd. The afternoon sun was blistering, the humidity so thick you could almost drink it, yet this small piece of silver felt like it had been pulled from a deep freezer. I pocketed it, dismissing the sensation as a trick of the heat. It was a fascinating artifact, nothing more. I told myself that over and over. That night back in the stilt house, the world began to tilt. My grandmother, Yi Sathya, was already asleep in her small room, her soft snores a familiar, comforting rhythm. I was sitting on the thin mat on the floor, the amulet on the small wooden table beside me, catching the faint light from the single bare bulb hanging from the ceiling. Outside, the night was a symphony of life. The ceaseless, high-pitched drone of cicadas was the sound of the Cambodian countryside, the very pulse of the darkness. And then it stopped. Not gradually, not fading away. It was as if a switch had been thrown. 1 second the air was vibrating with the sound of a million tiny insects. The next there was only silence. A silence so profound, so absolute, it felt louder than the noise it replaced. It hummed in my ears, a low, pressing frequency that made the fine hairs on my arms stand up. The air grew thick, heavy. Then came the smell. It seeped up through the gaps in the floorboards, a cloying, sickly sweet scent of overripe mangoes and damp, freshly turned earth. It was the smell of decay, of fruit left to rot in the sun, of a garden after a flood. It was a smell that didn't belong in the dry, dusty air under the house. It was a wet smell, a living smell. I froze, listening. The comforting snores from my grandmother's room had ceased. The only sound was my own ragged breathing. I pushed myself up slowly, my joints cracking in the silence, and crept towards the open window. The moon was a sliver, casting long, skeletal shadows across the small yard below. The broad, waxy leaves of the banana trees stood perfectly still. There was no breeze. But then they began to rustle. It wasn't the light, papery whisper of wind. It was a heavy, deliberate sound, a dragging. The sound of something thick and weighty shifting its position, dragging itself across the dry dirt and dead leaves. The rustling moved slowly, deliberately, from the edge of the jungle towards the house, towards the space directly beneath my feet. I could almost feel the weight of it through the floorboards, a subtle vibration that seemed to travel up the stilts and into the very frame of the house. My heart was a frantic drum against my ribs. I backed away from the window, my eyes darting around the dimly lit room. My gaze fell upon the small, boxy television in the corner. It was off, its screen a square of dark, reflective glass. It showed a distorted image of the room behind me, the woven mat, the wooden table, my own hunched silhouette. I stared at my reflection, trying to calm my breathing. and then I saw it. My reflection was looking back at me, but it was wrong. In the dark glass, its head was tilted at a slight, unnatural angle, and it was smiling, not my smile. It was a grin that stretched impossibly wide, pulling the features of my own face into a grotesque mask of silent, ecstatic glee. The mouth in the reflection was a perfect mirror of the crescent carved into the silver amulet on the table. I let out a sound, a choked gasp, and stumbled backward, my hand flying to my mouth. The reflection didn't move. It just kept staring, its silent, joyful grin burning into me from the darkness of the screen. I squeezed my eyes shut, then opened them again. The reflection was normal, just my own terrified face staring back. But the silence outside remained, and deep within it I could still smell the sweet, cloying scent of rot. Something was under the house, and it knew I was here. The next morning, the world seemed determined to convince me I was mad. The sun rose, hot and white, and the cicadas screamed their song into the humid air as if they had never stopped. The sickly smell was gone, replaced by the familiar sense of Yi's cooking, lemongrass and frying fish. She greeted me with her usual warm, wrinkled smile, her eyes, clouded with age, showing no sign that anything had been amiss. "You look tired, Rith," she said, placing a bowl of steaming rice porridge bobber in front of me. "The city has made you soft. The countryside is too loud for you." I wanted to tell her. I wanted to describe the crushing silence, the smell, the impossible thing I saw in the television screen. But how could I? She would think the heat had gotten to me. Or worse, she would believe me. And the look of fear in her eyes was something I didn't think I could bear. So I just nodded. "Didn't sleep well, Yi." I spent the day trying to work, but my mind wasn't on the crumbling stones of the temple. My eyes kept straying to the base of the banyan tree where I'd found the amulet. The earth looked undisturbed, but I felt a palpable chill every time I looked at it. The amulet was in my pocket, heavy and cold against my leg. I tried to leave it back at the house, but a strange, possessive anxiety gripped me when I thought of being separated from it. It felt safer to have it with me. A deeply irrational thought, but I couldn't shake it. That evening, as dusk bled purple and orange across the rice paddies, I sat with Yi on the veranda. She was weaving a basket from palm fronds, her fingers moving with a slow, practiced grace. "Yi," I began, trying to sound casual, "that temple Prasad Esdach sleep, is there a story about it?" Her hand stilled for a fraction of a second, a barely perceptible pause. "All old places have stories," she said, her eyes not leaving her work. "They are just stones now, homes for snakes and spirits who have nowhere else to go." "Spirits?" I pressed. "What kind of spirits?" She finally looked up at me. Her gaze was sharp, probing. "You are a man of the city, Rith. You believe in concrete and steel, not in Kamoch and Nikta. It is not good to ask questions about things that should be left to sleep." She pointed with her chin towards the small spirit house in the corner of our yard, where a stick of incense was burning, its thin ribbon of smoke rising straight into the still air. "We give them offerings, we show respect, and we do not disturb their homes." Her words felt like a warning I had already failed to heed. I pulled the amulet from my pocket. "I found this there, buried." The moment she saw it, the warmth drained from her face. Her skin seemed to tighten over her cheekbones and her eyes widened. She didn't reach for it. Instead, she recoiled slightly, pulling her hands into her lap. "Where?" she whispered, her voice thin. "By the big tree, at the base of the main tower." She stared at the silver face in my palm, its simple, carved smile seeming to mock us in the fading light. "You must put it back," she said, her voice low and urgent. "You must put it back where you found it, before the sun sets completely. Now." "Why, what is it?" "It is a lock, Rith, a seal. You have opened a door that was closed for a reason." She wouldn't say more. She just shook her head, muttering under her breath, a mix of prayers and pleas. The fear in her eyes was real. It was the fear I had dreaded seeing, and it chilled me more than the cold metal of the amulet itself. But a part of me, a stubborn, modern part, resisted. It was just a piece of silver, an archaeological find. Returning it felt like giving in to superstition. I argued with her, told her it was important, that it needed to be studied. Her pleas grew more desperate, but I was arrogant. I told her I would take it back to Phnom Penh, to the museum. It was the biggest mistake of my life. That night was worse. I lay on my mat, the house silent around me, clutching the amulet in my hand. It was no longer just cold. It seemed to thrum with a faint, deep vibration, a pulse that matched the frantic beating of my own heart. I kept the light on, afraid of the dark, afraid of what reflections might be hiding in it. The silence fell again just after midnight. The cicadas cut out, plunging the world into that same unnatural void. The smell returned, stronger this time, thick and suffocating. The sweet rot of mango and the wet, heavy scent of the grave. It was inside the house now. It was in the room with me. I didn't dare look towards the television. Instead, I stared at the wall, at a small, framed picture of my parents. Behind the glass, I could see a faint reflection of the room. I watched, my breath held tight in my chest, as a shadow detached itself from the deeper shadows in the corner. It was indistinct, a patch of deeper darkness, but it had a shape. The shape of a man, my shape. It glided silently across the reflection in the glass, stopping behind my reflected self. And then, slowly, a pale, white grin bloomed in the center of its dark form. The wide, joyful, terrifying smile. It wasn't reflecting me. It was standing right behind me. I screamed, a raw, ragged sound torn from my throat. I scrambled up, spinning around, my back hitting the wall. There was nothing there. The room was empty, but the smell was overpowering and the cold in the air was so intense I could see my own breath fogging in front of me. Below the house, the dragging, rustling sound started again. Heavy, slow, circling. I didn't sleep. I sat with my back against the wall, watching the door, until the first hint of gray dawn broke the horizon and the cicadas, my saviors, began their song once more. The thing was getting stronger, I could feel it. The days began to blur. I stopped working. I could barely eat. A profound lethargy settled over me, a weariness that went bone deep. My mind felt foggy, my thoughts slow and disjointed. I would find myself staring into space for hours, the cold amulet a constant weight in my pocket. My reflection became my tormentor. Every reflective surface was a new source of terror. A puddle of water left by the morning rain, the polished back of a spoon, the screen of my own phone. In each one I would catch glimpses of it. My face, but with that hideous, ecstatic grin. Sometimes it would be there for just a second. Other times it would linger, its head cocked, watching me with my own eyes. It was draining me. I felt like a plant being starved of sunlight, my own vitality, my own joy being siphoned away, feeding the thing that now wore my face in the world of shadows. Yi Sathya watched me wither. The fear in her eyes had been replaced by a grim, sad resignation. One afternoon, she found me sitting on the veranda, staring blankly at the banana trees. I hadn't spoken a word all day. She sat down beside me, her presence a small, fragile warmth in the cold that now seemed to perpetually surround me. "It is the Nak En Hiem," she said softly, "the smiler." I turned to look at her, my movement slow, sluggish. "The old stories say it was a spirit of the forest," she continued, her voice a low chant, a telling of a tale passed down for generations. "But it was not like the other spirits. It was a hollow thing. It had no feelings of its own, so it fed on the feelings of others. It was drawn to happiness, to laughter, to love. It would latch onto a person, a happy person, and it would drink their joy like a leech drinks blood. It would drain them until there was nothing left but an empty shell. And all the while it would smile." She pointed a trembling finger at the amulet which I was now holding in my lap. The monks and crew Khmer of the Old Kingdom, they were powerful. They managed to trap it. They bound it to that silver charm, and its smile was carved onto the seal as a warning. They buried it under the roots of the temple, a holy place, to keep it locked away, to let it sleep. "So I woke it up," I whispered. My voice sounded rusty, unused. She nodded, a single tear tracing a path through the wrinkles on her cheek. It was sleeping, but by taking the seal from the holy ground, you weaken the lock. It cannot fully escape, not yet, so it has latched onto the first person it touched. You, Rith. It is tethered to you. It is wearing your reflection, learning your face until it is strong enough to take your place. The blood drained from my face. To take my place. The thought was so monstrous I couldn't fully comprehend it. An empty version of me walking around with that terrifying smile while the real me was, what? Gone, a hollow husk. What do I do? I begged, the first real spark of energy I'd felt in days igniting in my chest. Yi, what do I do? The seal must be returned, she said, her voice firm. It must be reburied in the exact same spot, but it will not be easy. The Nak Enhiam will not want to be caged again. It will be strongest near the temple, strongest in the dark. You must go tonight. Tonight, the thought of returning to that place in the dead of night sent a wave of icy dread through me. It must be done during the darkest hour, before the monks at the main Wat begin their morning chants. Their prayers bring a light and a power that will drive it deeper into you, making it impossible to separate. You must go when the darkness is total, when you are most alone. The choice was not a choice. It was a death sentence either way. A slow, hollowing decay or a terrifying confrontation in the dark. That night, armed with a small shovel and a fading flashlight, I prepared to walk back to Prasad Esdat's sleep. Yi Sathya performed a small ceremony, tying a red cotton thread blessed by a monk around my wrist. She pressed a small pouch of coarse salt into my hand. For protection, she whispered, her hands trembling. Do not look back, Rith. No matter what you hear, go do what you must and come straight back. The journey was a nightmare. The jungle, which had been a place of buzzing, vibrant life, was now a hostile, alien world. The silence fell the moment I stepped beyond the circle of light from the village. The air grew cold and thick with the smell of mango and earth. Every sound was magnified. The snap of a twig sounded like a bone breaking. The rustle of leaves sounded like whispers, coiling around me, whispering my name in a voice that was almost, but not quite, my own. I could feel eyes on me from the impenetrable darkness between the trees. I kept my own eyes fixed on the narrow cone of light from my flashlight, afraid of what I might see if I looked away. The whispering grew louder as I neared the temple. It wasn't just my name anymore. It was twisting my memories, whispering my deepest fears. It spoke of my failures in Phnom Penh, of my loneliness, of the fear that my life amounted to nothing. It was trying to break me, to fill me with despair, to empty me so it would have more room to enter. I pushed on, the red thread on my wrist a tiny, desperate anchor to reality. The ruins of the temple loomed out of the darkness, blacker than the night sky. The air here was freezing cold, and the silence was absolute. I walked towards the giant banyan tree, its roots like the gnarled fingers of a dead giant. I found the spot where I had dug, the earth still soft. As I pushed the shovel into the ground, a sound made me freeze. Laughter. It was coming from the temple doorway behind me, a soft, joyful chuckle, my voice. I fought every instinct that screamed at me to turn around. Do not look back. Yi's voice echoed in my mind. I dug faster, my breath coming in ragged, panicked gasps. The laughter grew louder, more gleeful. Leaving so soon? My voice asked from the darkness. It was playful, chiding. But we were just getting to know each other. My shovel hit stone. I dropped to my knees, clawing at the dirt with my bare hands. I had to put the amulet back. I pulled it from my pocket. It was radiating a cold so intense it burned my skin. You don't want to do that, my voice said. It was closer now, right behind me. I could feel a cold breath on the back of my neck. It's so much better out here, so much joy, so much life. I can feel it all. Your grandmother's love, your ambition, your hope. It's all delicious. I ignored it, focusing on the hole on the smooth stone at the bottom. I placed the amulet down, flat against the stone, the smiling face pointing up at me from the dirt. As soon as it was in place, a shriek tore through the night. It was a sound of pure rage and agony, 1,000 voices screaming at once, and it came from directly behind me. The ground shook. The air crackled with a malevolent energy that pushed against me, trying to throw me back. I started shoveling the dirt back into the hole, my arms screaming with effort. The shrieking intensified, drilling into my skull. The whispers were a chaotic storm now, screaming my name, begging, threatening. A part of my mind buckled. I saw an image flash behind my eyes, my own body standing on the veranda, smiling down at my grandmother. The smile was wide, stretched, and utterly devoid of love. My blood ran cold. With a final, desperate shove, I packed the last of the dirt over the hole. I hammered it down with the back of the shovel. And then silence. The shrieking stopped. The whispers vanished. The oppressive cold receded. Faintly in the distance, I could hear the first, tentative chirps of crickets. The jungle was slowly coming back to life. I scrambled to my feet and ran. I didn't look back. I crashed through the undergrowth, branches whipping at my face, my lungs burning. I ran until the lights of the village were in sight, until I burst into the small yard and collapsed onto the steps of the stilt house, sobbing with a mixture of terror and relief. The next morning, it felt like a fever had broken. The weariness was gone. The fog in my mind had lifted. My reflection in the mirror was just my own tired, tear-stained face. There was no trace of the monstrous grin. The amulet was gone, returned to its prison. I was free. I finished my contract a week later and packed my bags for Phnom Penh. My farewell with Yi was emotional. She held me tight, her small hands clutching my arm. "You are strong, Rith," she said, "but you have a shadow on your soul now. Be careful. Live a good life. Do not let the darkness find a crack to seep back in." I promised her I would. But the story doesn't end there. It's been a year since I left the village. I live in a modern apartment in the city. I have a good job. Life is normal. But sometimes when I'm tired or when I've had a bad day, I feel a phantom chill, a memory of the cold from that silver amulet. And there's something else. Sometimes late at night when I'm alone and the city is quiet, I'll catch my reflection in a dark window or my black phone screen. It's always just me, my normal, tired face. But if I look for too long, I start to notice something. A slight upturn at the corners of my mouth. A suggestion of a curve that shouldn't be there. It's faint, so faint I can almost convince myself it's a trick of the light. Almost. But I know what it is. It's a reminder, an echo. The Nak Enhiam is still there, sleeping under the roots of a forgotten temple. I may have locked the door, but I was the one who woke it up. And a small piece of its smile, a tiny seed of its hollow joy, has been planted inside of me. And I live in constant fear of the day it begins to grow. So if you ever find yourself walking among the ancient, silent stones of my homeland, surrounded by the beauty and the history, be careful, be respectful. And if your hand closes around a piece of tarnished silver buried in the dark earth, I beg of you, leave it where it lies. Some things are buried for a reason, and some smiles should never, ever see the light of day.